Madam Chairman. Thank you, Delegate Bagby. I'm joined today by Assistant Special Agent in Charge Mitch Smith of the State Police. He heads up our high-tech crimes unit. And just to refresh your memory, you heard this bill, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. I heard Delegate Bagby's bill. To bring you up to date, as of today, we have 265 vacancies in the field. We have a class of 38. We've lost 32 since the first of the year, and we have 315 troopers eligible to retire this year. We're in a crisis, quite frankly. That's not an overstatement. They're leaving faster than we can train them. The Senate, what they did with Senate Bill 972, the bill that's before you now, is they incorporated the bill as it exists into their budget. 972 and 1710 solve our compression problem. They solved it. It's over. What the House did is very, very much appreciated. Don't get me wrong. I'm not for a second suggesting that we don't very much appreciate it. The House included $16.8 million in your budget that addresses pay compression problems. The Senate, what the Senate did, solves the pay compression problem. So what I'm hoping is that this will go to conference, and there will be a compromise that comes closer to solving the problem than merely addressing the problem, because that's what needs to happen to stop this hemorrhaging that we are experiencing. And one other thing I will offer as a prophecy, that if we can solve this problem, those 80 troopers we lost in that 1 year period between 2018 and 2019, that cost the Commonwealth over $16 million when we lost them, I would say to you that a significant portion of them will come back. Because they want to be troopers. They don't want to be local police officers, they want to be troopers, but they got to do what's best for their families. So we appreciated your support 2 weeks ago, and hope we can get it again tonight.
All right. Is there any questions or a motion?
And by the way, I brought copies of our pay compression plan that would solve this problem, and I'm happy to leave these with the committee so that you can review them for yourself.
Right. Thank you.
So I'm going to move the report.
Okay, motion to report. Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Report and refer.
Report and refer. There's motion to report and refer.
So it can join its sister in appropriation.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Please cast your votes. All right, bill passes 8-1. And we are still now waiting on Senators Barker and Mars. We have a whole committee nearly. I've seen our table so full, and we're out of patrons. So let me see here. Just presented. We've done Crossgrove. So let's see. We don't have Senate container or House container either.
Where'd you get that idea from?
It's we have a full committee and then talking to them.
And yeah, there were patrons. Full committee and
Madam Chair, you can vote.
I know, I could present them. Well, you know, we could maybe have the conversation, because I know there's some folks who are here to speak to Senator Marsden's bill, and I know some of us are pretty familiar with it. Maybe we can see where this conversation goes until we get a patron here. But if we would like to maybe start the hearing for SB 758, which deals with, let's see if I have the right words I want to use here. It's going to change the weight limit. Maybe would, Ms. Buck, would you maybe be comfortable reporting the nature of the bill, and then we can maybe hear from and ask some questions of some of the experts who I know are in the room who are here to speak to that bill. And if Senator Marsden comes, we can maybe continue that conversation, or maybe the committee will reach a conclusion favorable.
Yes, Madam Chair, currently in the code we have a definition of electronic personal delivery devices. This would change that term from electronic personal delivery devices to personal delivery devices. It would also change the weight limit from 50 pounds to 200 pounds. It also has provisions that allow localities to regulate the use of these devices on roadways, and on certain portions of allow them to regulate on sidewalks and certain roadways with a speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less if the sidewalk isn't available. And when we're talking about these electronic personal delivery devices, we're talking about a device that does not have a driver in it. It has a remote operator.
Okay, and I understand there is a proposed line amendment, which my understanding is the patron is comfortable with. Currently, the bill before us has a 200-pound weight limit. There is a line amendment that's been offered to include, I think the 200-pound limit is based on what one company's product is, but there are other companies who participate in this same model of delivering items with these vehicles, and their weights are higher than 200. So I think the concept here was to increase the weight limit to include the full current market for this type of vehicle. So that line amendment would increase the weight to
500.
500.
Madam Chair,
And that's on,
Okay.
and that's on line
Sorry.
261.
So I think,
Nicole,
Oh, sorry.
we're doing all the amendments.
Yes.
Okay.
The patroness.
Oh, if you're okay with it.
Sorry, the patron is good with the 200, Nicole Renner at Reed Smith on behalf of Federal Express. The patron is good with the technical amendment and the 200 to 500 pound amendments. I understand that he's also fine with the technical amendment from VDOT and from, State Police.
okay, so there's several amendments the patron's fine with. If council could report those amendments so we know exactly what amendments we're putting before us.
All right, and I'll pass around, I'll also, describe what they are and report the amendments. So on line 261 of the engrossed bill, after exceed, strike the remainder of the line and insert 500. So this changes the weight limit from 200 to 500. On line 468 of the engrossed bill, after roadway, insert under its jurisdiction. This line amendment makes clear that the locality's authority is for roadways that are under its jurisdiction, not VDOT roadways. On line 469, after operation, insert Commonwealth Transportation Board may not prohibit the use of a personal delivery device on a roadway under its jurisdiction as set forth in this subsection, but may, by regulation, adopt additional requirements designed to maintain safety for such roadway operation. This mirrors the language for localities in regulating these devices. On line 481 of the engrossed bill, after C, strike no. On line 481 of the engrossed bill, after electric, after the stricken word electric, insert any. On line 481 engrossed, after device, strike shall transport, insert transporting. After ammunition, stricken on lines 482 of the engrossed bill, strike the remainder of line 482 through under on 483. Insert shall comply with. On line 484 of the engrossed bill, after C, insert any corresponding federal regulations. What that does is it takes the line that currently reads down to the correct line number. It's about the hazardous materials. It takes the line that currently reads, no personal delivery device shall transport hazardous materials in a quantity requiring placarding. Oh, here's the senator.
Senator Mars, we were just presenting your bill because we've all know so
Well,
much
still,
about
it
it.
is,
Now,
You
Yeah, we
guys,
were just
you
kinda
guys
going.
probably, I remember from my days in the House members were always better at presenting bills.
well, Ms. Spock is actually
Terrible.
expertly reporting the content of your bill and the amendments. So she was just reading, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I figured you should know we were hearing this bill. She was just reporting the amendments that we were about to probably hear a motion to adopt once we understood what the various amendments were. And then we'll be ready to go with you at that moment.
Okay.
And, so Madam Chair, just to, finish up the line amendments that I read, on 4 through 8, essentially changed the language for the hazardous materials, provision to say that any delivery device transporting hazardous materials shall comply with the Federal Hazardous Material Transportation Act, 49 USC 5105 et seq, and any corresponding federal regulations. Then it goes on to fix a drafting error which had a mislabeling of code sections. It went from D to F, so now at 493, strike F, insert D, and 496, strike D, insert F.
Good amendment.
Amendments have been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Yes, I do have a question. So either for council or for the patron, does this mean that now with what we've changed, that these things could actually carry hazardous material? Okay.
No, Madam Chair, right now, the prohibition on, transporting hazardous materials, is tied to whether or not it would require placarding under federal law. This, makes it clear that it needs to just comply with federal law, and this was a concern of the state police, so I don't know if they're in the room, but.
And Madam Chair, I would like to propose another amendment, if we're at a point to do that.
Elliot Reed?
So in line 476, since we've now increased the weight of these from 50 to 200 to 500 pounds, I am concerned about the not to exceed 10 miles per hour on sidewalks and crosswalks, because 500 pounds plus payload makes these things easily 600 pounds. 10 miles an hour on a sidewalk is a fast run, and a normal person walks at 2.5 miles an hour. So I would like to suggest that this be changed from 10 to not to exceed 5 miles an hour.
Second.
All right, how does the patron perceive that amendment, if you'd like to maybe consult with,
Yeah, the question, obviously, in these things, it is a, business model, in terms of the cost effectiveness and speed is, and the amount of the payload and the speed are part of that. So I would like to phone a friend on this.
Yeah. We're talking about 600 pounds on a sidewalk.
So faster, Brian.
I was worried.
Can we see it in our tradition?
Can I let my technical expert
Absolutely.
plead that? This is,
Sure. Hi, sorry, Brian Moore from Amazon. We have a device called Amazon Scout, which we just rolled out early January last year. And so one of the reasons that we're interested in this bill is to be able to operate here in Virginia. Understand the concern about the speed limits, and I think this, we've had some discussions before. The idea of the 10-mile-per-hour limit would be a maximum. That does not mean that we would consider operating in a sidewalk, particularly when there's other people present at 10 miles an hour to be safe. So I think, it's the situation specifically. Also, given that they'd be operating in different conditions, there might be instances where needing to go faster is important for that specific situation. I think the important component is to make sure that it's operating safely. I'd also be a bit concerned, I don't know off the top of my head what other jurisdictions have done, and don't want to get too far out of whack here in terms of what the restrictions are on the speed limits.
Elliot Bagby, I saw your
Yeah,
hand.
so how many other states do you have these in?
We operate in California and Washington State.
Okay. And what's the maximum speed on those?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
And there's probably 10 jurisdictions that have bills.
Duplace Pavilion with FedEx. We operate in Texas, and the speed limit is 10. So, and plan on operating in Louisiana.
You have an idea what the accident reports are with it?
We have no accident reports as of now. There's none.
Delegate Murphy had a question, and then Delegate Rome.
I do have a question. What would happen if someone got in their way? How's it stop? Automatically, what happens?
Sure. So there is an algorithm that will immediately recognize as either an individual or a vehicle or a person, and it will stop automatically. And then there's also, we have LiDAR, radar, as well as a remote operator that can stop.
Delegate Rome, and then back to Delegate
Sure.
Bagby.
Madam Chair, first, speaking to the bill, speaking to the amendment.
Delegate Rome.
I guess speaking to the motion, okay, wherever we're supposed to. I think that what Delegate Reed is trying to do here is just making sure that under all circumstances, people around this thing are going to be safe. And that the more weight you put onto it, if I get hit by 10 miles an hour for, a piece of paper or something thin, it's not gonna do a lot of damage. When you're talking about 600 pounds at 10 miles an hour, that's a heck of a hit. And I understand that they have safeguards. I understand that the technology is being designed right now to make sure that it would not have an impact. However, that said, even if Texas is doing 10, and I appreciate the fact that we have existing precedents, that maybe then there could be a reasonable compromise if you're not expecting to generally get to 10, that we can hit 7. Please keep in mind, this is not something where we have to have a 5 or a 0 number because it's not a speed limit. It's not something where we're trying to hit between there. You can probably split it in this case and try to find a safe way. Or the other thing that we can do is we can accept Delegate Reed's amendment, test drive this thing for a year, and if we find that there are times where you need to go above 5 miles an hour, or that they would need to go above 5 miles an hour, that we come back next year and we can deal with this. But I would much rather us err on the side of safety and not getting people hit by 600-pound moving objects than to take a gamble on that.
Delegate Bagby had did you wanna respond to that and then?
Just responding to that, I think 7 works a little bit better. We have 10 million hours of safe operation on the FedEx version of this, and a year of operation in Washington and California without incident. So, but every state is different. Every place is different where you're going to operate, and I think the committee is not off track here in trying to establish something that shows due diligence and care. This is certainly something that we can come back next year if we're finding that it's still working where it's working now, and we come back and the 7 is working and can be raised to 10. I think we're good in that regard, and so the track record here has been good, but I think we're fine with 7.
Okay, Delegate Bagby.
No, I was just gonna keep going on, but it's not worth going back and forth. I don't support the amendment, but if it keeps the bill going,
Right.
then let's go with it. I haven't heard anyone say anything that is associated with any facts
Right.
with public safety
And that
associated with the change, but
I think would be my point to speak to the motion, is I certainly agree with the idea that we wanna make sure that if we have these vehicles out on our sidewalks, that people are safe and they're not having collisions that could be dangerous. What I don't particularly love is kind of making arbitrary decisions about what is safe or not, because I'm certainly not equipped to know how much safer is a 5 mile an hour collision than a 10 mile an hour collision at a certain weight. What I do think if it's the pleasure of the committee to continue to move the bill forward, I think we should do that. But what I might like to see if any of the industry folks might have an answer to, or might be able to get an answer to, of the data that you have been collecting in your time operating in other states. Do you have data, or could you get data that shows what speeds you are typically operating in like jurisdictions, so where you'd be operating here to know? I mean, are there times where certain percentage of time you're above 5, certain percentage of time you're above 7, just to kind of understand how?
I could certainly reach out, for Amazon, I could certainly reach out and ask. I think we are tracking that data.
Okay.
Right now too, I should say, our devices are being, with an attendant with them, so they have that.
Sure.
In the near term.
Which is, I have a little bit of a hesitation of kind of arbitrarily picking a number, not really knowing how that mirrors your practice as
We can
well.
also check too in terms of what other jurisdictions have done, in case that gives some level of comfort as well.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Austin and Delegate Collins, and we'll go back over here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Are these devices typically used at off-peak hours for delivery, or when would you expect delivery to take place with these devices?
Right.
Throughout the day?
As we're developing it right now for Amazon, we're delivering in the normal business hours, just because we have, again, like an attendant going along with them, so it's during the daylight hours. I think
Okay.
in the future, we would want to probably expand beyond that.
Okay.
Same
Thank
with,
you. Madam Chair.
Delegate Collins?
Thank you.
I consulted the state police. I think they have a few things they probably would like to add to this. If I could ask the state police,
we've already done it.
now,
More?
now with the new weight.
More?
So,
Well, a question came up and I answered,
Madam
Chair, Ron Maxon, Virginia State Police. Delegate Collins.
So the question I was asking him was, when I asked him in the back, what kind of accident data we've collected in Virginia, and can you give the answer to the committee of why that?
And Madam Chair, to answer the question, Delegate Bagby had asked the question. They're not deemed to be a vehicle, so we would not do a crash report. Bicycles do show up because they do qualify under definition as a vehicle. This specifically comes up from that. So we wouldn't be reporting that information to the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Delegate Rowe?
So Madam Chair, what I would recommend then, if it's the will of the committee on this, is that if we did change it to 7, and at the same time ask the industry folks to come back for full committee with the data that you requested, so that if we find that there's, a particularly good reason to keep it at 10, we have that, while understanding that for those of us on the committee to arbitrarily be setting a number, I completely get the hesitation on that, while at the same time I think that it is very reasonable for us to discern that getting hit by something at 600 pounds at 10 miles an hour versus 5 miles an hour, one's gonna leave you a little bit more checkered than the other. So that's, at the appropriate time, I'll be happy to make a motion for it.
Delegate Austin, did you have?
I would just respond to Doug's comments. I think it's more likely that someone run into it than it run into someone. So, I think these devices are safe. We had a piece of legislation a few years ago go through with the same device. It was just smaller and it carried less weight capacity. But I think there's been numerous studies and these things have been in planning for many, many years. I feel them to be safe. I personally don't have a problem with the 10 mile per hour speed. I think it will vary its speed according to the people in proximity. So I think it's probably a proven, fairly safe device on the sidewalk. But I'm comfortable with what I can choose.
Okay, all right, so there's a motion and a second to
Or,
adopt.
because we can't fix it, right?
Senator, are you?
Yeah, the 10 miles an hour was in existing code. If you'll remember, a few years ago, those of you who were here, there was another device that was.
Right, and it's a delegate,
that was
yeah.
approved, albeit a smaller,
Right.
smaller unit, so,
Okay,
so that's it.
okay.
But the 10 it was already in existing.
Okay,
Virginia
well,
code.
if the senator's comfortable with adopting the 7 and recognizing that we still are gonna go to full, and if there's new data that industry can
Absolutely,
support
yeah.
for a change one way or the other, I think we'll be able to have that conversation
Senator,
in the full
Madam
committee.
Chair, Senator, I hope you, as long as we talk longer, I turn, and I can't support the 7 now. It just, the argument has made me even more committed to the 10. So, hopefully you'll get the numbers to vote for the 7.
Okay, so
But
we
I
have,
can't vote for the 7.
we have the motion before us to adopt an amendment to 7, so that is something that we will need to take a voice vote for, is if that
So
delegate
we
Reed.
have 5, but she's suggested changing it to 7. Am I
Fair
okay with
enough,
that?
are you going to, or is
Yes.
delegate going to amend the motion to 7?
Yes, I'm
So
fine with
moved.
And so it's been moved and seconded that we have a friendly amendment to adjust the speed to 7. The patron is accepting that as a friendly amendment and recognizing that this could be an ongoing conversation in full. So all those in favor?
I think.
Delegate Reed?
Delegate Adams was suggesting was suggesting 7.4.
Oh, well, I mean, we could really split it down the middle. We could really split it down the middle from there.
Man.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, chair is in doubt, so, all those in favor say aye. Is it, will that be recorded, I think you can do your hands. All those in favor of 7.0, say aye. All right, those opposed? Okay, so that motion fails. We're back at 10.
Move the report.
All right, it's been moved and seconded,
With amendments.
moved and seconded to report with amendments. Please record your vote.
I'm gonna keep it on the contested calendar.
We'll continue this speed conversation into full, if
Full
anyone,
speed.
full speed
So
ahead.
I'll tell you what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put a no on this, just for the debate, and then that's it.
Understood. All right, your, bill passes out of subcommittee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. It's taken me weeks to invent this thing.
Jeff knows some.
All right, so we have one final missing patron in, Senator Barker. Is anyone familiar with Senator Barker's vote? This is our last
He's in,
one.
he's in labor and commerce right now, so he's right downstairs. I guess we could, do you think we can reach out?
Does anybody want to?
Actually, I'll move those over here somewhere.
Senator Barker's my senator, so maybe I can give it.
You feel,
No. It wasn't, no.
So is this something that the DMV might, do you have good knowledge of what's happening?
I'm more than happy to help the chair and Delegate Rome.
Okay.
Currently, Madam Chair, as you know, our statute that says who we can issue a driver's license to is extremely limited. It has like 6 categories. which covers about 90% of the folks who are here legally. There's probably another dozen categories that are not covered in our statute, but they include people who are here legally. The immigration services, they are here legally. This is one of those groups. So all that Senator Barker is trying to do is add one more legal group to who we could issue a driver's license to. It would be a limited duration license, but still, these folks are here legally, they're just not covered by our current statute.
And which group is this?
Who are
These are folks who have an employment authorization document.
And so, could you explain, who are some of the people that are currently authorized that, or that this is adding to? Just to kind of give us a sense of.
It would be people that like student visas.
Okay,
It would be
okay.
people who are here working. I'm sorry, Delegate Maver, I should not have stood up.
No, that's fine, that's fine, I think that helped, I think
But again,
that.
it takes care of probably 90% of the people who are here legally. And again,
Adds
there's a
another
dozen
category
categories.
that's here, they're obviously authorized to work, because they have an employment authorization document, they need to get to work. Senator, or I'm sorry.
Please.
So it's talking to the senators, I know,
Please
no,
go.
I'm sorry.
I was just going, Madam Chair, I was just going to ask Commissioner Hogan, the definition of employment authorization document, how is that defined? In your code?
It's a document, it would be defined in the federal statute.
Visa to be here to work or something like that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Folks who are here authorized to work. It's a status granted to them by immigration.
And they would have to test?
No, yes, sir, anyone who comes in to get a credential, and they, again, would get a limited duration license, which would be for as long as their authorization card is last, but yes, sir, they would.
Would they have to test and
They would have to
reapply?
take the knowledge test, the skills test, and the vision test.
Okay.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, but
Delegate Murphy.
does this cover students in colleges?
No, that is a category that we currently, under our statute, can issue a limited duration license to.
So,
Madam Chair.
Delegate Murphy.
Um, Council is gonna.
Just to really quick, this is what would typically be called a work permit, and it's defined under federal law.
Okay. So I was looking it up, it's in
Delegate Reed.
Form I-766, and it says an employment authorization document is an asylee, refugee, their spouses, children, citizens or nationals of countries falling into certain categories, foreign students with an active F1 status, M1 status who wish to pursue practical training, J1 summer work travel visa, spouses of exchange visitors, eligible dependents, certain employees-based non-immigrants, certain family-based non-immigrants, I mean.
Question
I
from
was gonna ask,
Commissioner
I don't wanna step over the other chairwoman's, motion, but if the governor signs in the law the driver's license for all, this would make this moot, correct?
Either approach, the driver privilege card or the driver license for all, but I think it would be useful to move this one forward.
because we don't know what's.
No, I understand,
ultimately
I
gonna
just wanna
happen
make
with
sure that
one.
we're having conflicting laws being passed.
Right,
We're
right.
gonna have to
Delegate
put
Austin.
one conference together to figure this stuff out.
Madam Chair, I would ask Commissioner Hogan, do you have any knowledge of how many people this may accommodate? Guesstimate.
Not to this, but to all 12 categories, it was like 6,000 people. So this is a very small amount of the people. And yes, I phoned a friend, my VDOT partner told me that, yes, this is a form I-760, commonly called a work permit, but all of the groups that are not included is only 6,000 folks.
Okay, well, let's hear if there's any public testimony. Delegate Adams, did you have a question before we move to
I
that
had a
portion?
question, yes, about some of the language in the statute. You can answer this, Commissioner, just reading where it says that any limited duration license, this is the last sentence of subsection B, and it refers to a license, permit, or special identification extended by the United States Immigration and Naturalization Service or the Bureau of Citizenship and Immigration Services. And then that language is stricken and replaced with a federal court or federal agency having jurisdiction over immigration. Can you speak as to why we would, broaden that?
Debbie,
language?
maybe I need to,
That may be a
maybe
question
I
for
need to,
council.
yeah.
Madam Chair, this is not the first year that we've had bills, that are similar to this, and, the change here is because the language, the title of the federal agency is outdated, and to prohibit, or, prevent us from having to come back, each time we add a new class or a federal agency is renamed, we went for the broader language here.
Follow-up question.
Delegate Adams?
And I can understand that with respect to the second clause, federal agency having jurisdiction, but, a court is not mentioned in the, existing language, is it? I'm just wondering why we would extend it to include judiciary.
Madam Chair, Delegate Adams, now that I have the bill before me, I see that the senator was kind enough to adopt a substitute that we suggested, which includes all of those categories, so all 6,000 people. So for instance, right now, victims of human trafficking can get a limited duration credential in Maryland. They cannot get one in Virginia. If someone is helping our law enforcement as an informer, they can't get a license. So this is a little broader. This takes care of all 6,000 folks, and what it says, anyone that the federal government or a federal court says are here legally are entitled to get a Virginia credential, which is what most other states do. Our statute was very limited.
Any other questions before the patron may come through these doors any second now? Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition of the bill?
I'll make a motion to report.
All right, it's been moved
Second.
and seconded to report the bill. If we're comfortable doing that without the patron, this will have the opportunity to be heard in full committee. So if anyone,
And again, I think we have several of these that are gonna have to have a lot of discussion and coordination amongst this and Kathy Train's bill. And
right, and I
Supervisor
think,
bill.
recognizing that this is a piece of that issue, I think moving it forward, I personally feel is not in a bad position to take, knowing that there will be some outcome this session, that's gonna deal with that, and so, all right, so moved and seconded to report the bill, please vote accordingly on your electronic voting board. And, we will advise the patron to then be present at the full committee as the bill passes out 5-4.
And I'm sure that all of our bills going before the Senate, that they will pass without us being there.
We've set a nice precedent here.
How long have you been here?
We've set a nice